Hey, today we're going to go over three simple ways that you can measure your food intake. And we're going to go over the one clear winner when it comes to overall accuracy of measurement. Hey, my name is Brett Hamilton, and I help people just like you who are busy, but who are looking to transform how their body moves, how it looks, and how it feels in its clothes, and do it in a way that's the most sustainable way possible, meaning that it requires the least amount of input from you on a daily basis, but that allows you to sustain the change over a long period of time and eventually maintain it. So, in the next couple of minutes, let's go over these three simple ways of measuring your food intake, okay? And the first measurement method is basically your eyeballs, okay? Now, we all inherently measure our food with our eyeballs, and we may not even be consciously doing it, but when you're putting food on your plate for breakfast, your lunch, or your dinner, and we're not measuring it in any specific way possible, but we're looking at how much we're putting on. Well, that's a form of measurement, whether we're in tune with it or not. And the problem with your eyeballs is it is an inherently inaccurate way of measuring your food. And so if we're relying on our eyes to do the measuring for us, our eyes, you ever heard the term, your eyes were bigger than your stomach? Well, you put more food on your plate than you ended up needing or requiring, so we waste food. Or sometimes we put less food on our plate than we end up needing, and we go back for more. And so because of that, it's not exactly the best way to know if we're eating the right amount of food for our bodies based on what our goals are. And that's why I don't recommend using your eyeballs as a form of measurement. Okay. So another form of measurement is using your hands. And hands are very accurate form of measurement, right? Because if you're using your palm size as a reference or your fist size as a reference, the tool that you're using to measure doesn't really change in size unless you're a child that's growing at a really rapid rate. But if you're an adult, if you're a teenager, your hands are probably not going to get that much bigger. And at that point, it's a really accurate way of measuring. The problem is, again, is because it's not a completely accurate form of measurement, because what is a palm size? You put a piece of chicken on your palm. Okay, yeah, it's pretty close, but like pretty close could be the difference between like an ounce to an ounce and a half, really. So it's not a perfectly foolproof way of measuring, especially if you grab a fistful. Like, let's say you grab a fistful of like spinach leaves, for example. Like, you could grab a really big fistful and have that fistful be like piled on outside your hand, or you could grab it where it fits nicely inside of your hand. Big difference in the amount at the end of the day, but it's still a fistful technically. So in that way, again, it is not the most accurate form of measurement, but if you're doing it compared to using your eyeballs, man, is that a great place to start. And it's a great way of getting more in tune with how much you're eating, because you can still check in and think like, okay, for lunch, I had one palm size of protein. I had a couple of fistfuls of vegetables. I had a fistful of fruit. I had a big spoonful of rice, very easy way of measuring, and you can kind of gauge the amount of food that you're eating that way. Now, the last form of measurement is actually using a food scale and then weighing your food out. And there's a couple of ways that you could weigh. Like here in the United States, ounces is the most common form of weighing. But the problem is that even ounces compared to grams is a far more accurate method. And so I highly recommend, if you have a food scale and it measures in grams, use the grams amount, because it is the most accurate way of measuring out your food. And you'd be surprised if you weigh in ounces and then you compare it to grams. What 0.1 ounces is on a food scale could be the difference between the 5 to 6 grams on a gram basis. So grams is just in general going to be a more accurate method. And if your goal is to be changing something about your weight or changing something about your body composition, generally speaking, the most accurate form of measurement is always going to be the winner, right? So, and that's kind of like, if I use the analogy of measuring expenses in my business, money coming in, money coming out. It's like, I could leave that up to guessing and just going by feel and checking my account once a month, but sometimes that means that I'm going to spend more money and I shouldn't have been, because I wasn't paying close attention to my account. Other times that means that maybe I'm taking in more money than I realize, and I could have been spending money on things that I was holding off on purchasing, but I didn't realize that I had the money. So another example would be, well, if I'm staying in tune with my account on a daily basis because I'm reconciling every expense and purchase that I'm making to my business account, well, then I have a very kind of like a good feel for what's happening in my business on a daily basis so that I can make really well-informed decisions with it. The same can be said for measuring your food intake. So you could leave it up to guessing, which is kind of eyeballing. You could leave it up to hand measurements, which means maybe you're measuring things, but it's not the most accurate form of measurement. And maybe your account isn't getting fully balanced every single day or every single week. And so we still can fall into some traps at some point, or we could be doing it on a daily basis. Or we could, measuring your food, for example, using a food scale. And that would give you the most powerful type of information possible so that when it comes time to make a decision based on what direction to head, whether should I be eating more, should I be eating less, should I be changing a type of food that I'm eating based on how my body's responding, you have some concrete information available to you that will make the decision easier, and the likelihood of you making a decision that is going to support the outcome that you're making easier and also more likely to happen. Okay. So anyways, that kind of gives an example here. I'm not going to go over how to measure food on a food scale in this video. I will have a video about that. But if this video was valuable to you, if you found some benefit to it, if you think a friend would appreciate it, share it with them. I ask you. And also, as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for taking the time to do it. I really appreciate it. Hey, my name is Brett Hamilton, and I'll catch you